Welcome to this presentation. Hopefully y'all really liked our title as much as we do, Dating and Afraid, the Field Guide to Romantic Relationships. My name is Adrienne McCullers. I am a psychology intern at Counseling Services, and this is
Heather Smith. I'm a marriage and family therapist over at Counseling Services. So we're here to help you guys be better at dating.
Someone needs to mute their microphone, please. Okay, it sounds like they were muted. Okay. So today we're going to be talking about romantic relationships, and actually specifically we are going to be talking about different attachment styles. So I'm not sure if that is something that people have heard of before or is a familiar topic. Maybe you've heard that in your classes and stuff. So we're going to be talking about that with regards to dating, how that can both be helpful and sometimes be hurtful depending on the type of romantic relationship that you're in. So starting off to what is an attachment style, basically it's a pattern of expectations, needs, emotions, and different social behaviors that result from a history of different attachment experiences. And the research will show that our attachment styles are very heavily influenced by the way our parents cared for us. And also, specifically in relationships, attachment style is how one perceives and responds to intimacy from their partner. And the romantic bonds in our adult life are very similar to the ones that they find with infants and their primary caregivers, so their parents. And one of the things about attachment styles is that it can influence the success or also the failure of a romantic relationship. So it's something that's very important for you to be aware of, not just for yourself, but also with regards to your partner, to be able to know their attachment style as well, because it can be very helpful in navigating some of these complicated dating situations that come up all the time. So there's 4 types of attachment styles. You have the secure attachment style, and about 50% of the people in the population would identify with a secure attachment style. And if you'll notice on this graph that I have to the right, the secure attachment style is in that top left quadrant. Then you have the anxious attachment style, and research shows that about 20% of the population would identify with more of this anxious attachment style. Then you have the avoidant attachment style. 25% of people are avoidant, and you'll see that it is in the bottom left quadrant. And then you have the anxious avoidant attachment style that's located in that bottom right quadrant. 3 to 5% of the people in the population would identify with more of the anxious or avoidant attachment style. And as you can already tell, that's one of the more less common attachment styles, but it does happen. And it is something that we will discuss briefly in here, only because it is one of the less common ones, and the other 3, the things we talk about, would also be relevant for the anxious avoidant style as well. So between the secure, between the anxious, the avoidant, and even the anxious avoidant style, every person who identifies with one of these different styles is going to be different with regards to how they view intimacy, how they view togetherness in a relationship, how you deal with conflict is influenced by your attachment style. Also, your attitude towards sex or sexual behaviors, your ability to communicate, your wishes, your needs, what you want in a relationship, and also the expectations from your partner in the relationship. So, but your attachment style very much influences all of these things, and that's why it's very important that we are aware of our own attachment style as well as our partners, because it can really influence the relationship itself. So basically what I just said is, why do we care about any of this? Like, why do we care about our attachment style? Why do we care about how it influences our dating relationships? Well, because it's really a nice way, and it's an easy way and a very reliable way to understand and be able to predict either your own or your partner's romantic behaviors, which is kind of nice in certain situations. If you kind of know potentially what to expect, you can kind of better prepare yourself for those certain situations, or maybe prevent yourself from getting in those situations based on your own attachment style or your partner's. And I think our attachment styles really do, cause us to act in a very predetermined way in certain romantic situations. So, any questions thus far about any of these things that we've talked about? Okay. So I'm going to read, I have 3 different scenarios that are going to come up next. And I'm going to read the different qualities that are in each one. They're labeled number 1, number 2, and number 3. As I'm reading through these different characteristics, I want you to just make a mental note as to which one, 1, 2, or 3, maybe describes you the best or not so much, okay? And just kind of jot that down if you have a piece of paper, or just make a mental note of it, because we'll kind of go back to that, and just for you to keep kind of like a brainstorming in the back of your mind. So this style number 1, you love to be very close to your romantic partners. You have the capacity for great intimacy. You often fear that your partner does not wish to be as close as you would like them to be. You may be very sensitive to small fluctuations in your partner's moods or actions. You may take your partner's behaviors a little bit too personally at times. Sometimes you experience a lot of negative emotions within the relationship and also can get very easily upset. You tend to act out and maybe say things that you'll later regret. If the other person does provide a lot of security and reassurance, then you're kind of able to shed a lot of this preoccupation you may have and also feel contented in the relationship. So if those are things that describe you or that you identify more with when in a romantic relationship, just jot down number 1. And number 2, are you typically warm and loving in a relationship and that really feels natural to you? You enjoy being intimate with your partner while not becoming overly worried about your relationship as a whole. You take things in stride when it comes to romance and don't get easily upset over relationship matters or certain situations. You effectively communicate your needs and feelings to your partner. You are strong at reading your partner's emotional cues and then also responding to them. You share your success and problems with your partner, so you're very open with them. You are able to be there for your partner in times of need. So if these little characteristics describe you, just jot down number 2, if that's something that you identify with. And then number 3, it is very important to you to maintain your independence and self-sufficiency in intimate relationships. You prefer autonomy. Even though you do want to be close to others, you feel uncomfortable with too much closeness, and you tend to keep your partner almost at an arm's length. You don't spend too much time worrying about your romantic relationships or being rejected. You tend to not open up to your partners. Your partners often complain that you are very emotionally distant, once again, keeping your partner at that arm's length. You're often on high alert for any signs of control or impingement on your territory by your partner. So if that is something that you identify with, jot down number 3. Okay, so just taking some guesses from the audience, if we can go back. So just going back, which attachment style would number 1 be? Any guesses? Anxious? Any other guesses? Show of hands, maybe, who agrees with that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so majority agree that this is the anxious attachment style. Heather? Okay, Heather agrees as well. So yes, that is correct. So that would be the anxious attachment style. Nice job. So what about number 2? What would number 2 be? Did somebody say something? So the one that was the 50% of people, so the secure attachment style, is that the one? Okay. Any other people agree with that or disagree? People agree? I see some head nods. Okay. So we agree that number 2 is the secure attachment style. What about number 3? Any guesses for what 3 is? And we already kind of know, but yeah, process of elimination. Yeah, so it's the avoidant. I actually didn't put the avoidant anxious for whatever reason, because it's basically a combination of 1 and 3. So for people who successfully guessed these, who got all 3 correct? Just with a show of hands. Pretty much everyone. Okay, nice. So that was good. And for people who were kind of maybe, did some people identify with one or the other or all of them? Combination of 1 and which one? 1 and 2 or 1 and 3? Okay, so you identified with a combination of 1 and 2. Okay. You as well, 1 and 2. Okay. Got another head on 1 and 2. Okay, so the anxious and the secure. Okay. Yeah. You identified with 2 and 3? Okay. All right. Was it easy or hard for people to pick out which style kind of best described them or that they identified with? Easy or hard? Yeah. Right, so a person in the audience was just saying that it was very hard to kind of decide which attachment style just because it differed on different relationships that she's been in and whatnot. So yeah, definitely, it can differ. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right, yeah, absolutely. So a gentleman in the audience said that it was hard for him to identify which one specifically he identified with the best because dating isn't something he has a lot of experience with, so you were going on just kind of guessing maybe how you feel in maybe pursuing certain things that may or may not pan out. Yeah, okay. Awesome, awesome. Well, now I'm going to turn it over to Heather to talk a little bit more in detail about one of the styles.
All right, let's get in it. So we're, like she said, we're just going to focus on sort of anxious and avoidant today, and we're actually going to kind of ignore secure. Hopefully it's implied that that's the goal to move everybody toward, but I think you guys brought up some good points that I think a lot of us are usually a combination of like a couple of different ones. Like maybe I'm mostly secure, but if I'm not sure about the other person, then I tend to be more anxious, or I tend to be more avoidant to deal with it. And that's pretty common. Most of us don't fall neatly into one category or another. So we'll start with anxious attachment. Let's see. Here we go. So if you tend toward feeling anxiously attached, or if you're in a relationship where that's sort of bringing that out in you, these are some of the most common emotions you might experience. Might be one way to tell if you're in a situation that's bringing that out of you. And I'll let you read through the list. Some of the ones that stood out most to me were feeling fearful, feeling frustrated, feeling jealous, uncertain about things, unappreciated maybe, or uneasy. In working with couples, like I said, I'm a marriage and family therapist, so this is what I do. A common theme, I think, in a lot of relationships that maybe aren't working or could use some work is that one partner tends to feel like they're the ones giving and giving and giving, and they can't get their partner to just give back or to care about them, and they're afraid that they're not important, they're afraid that they're not loved. Fear tends to be kind of a common undercurrent in the relationship, which really is hard. That's not fun. And these are maybe some common thoughts you might have if you are anxiously attached or in a situation where that's happening. So you might tend to try and read the other person's mind, like anticipate what they're thinking or feeling or what they're going to do. Like, oh, he didn't text me back today. We're breaking up. I knew it. I knew this would happen. Sort of jumping the gun on things. All or nothing thinking, kind of like what I was saying, that I've done something to ruin the relationship. It's over. There's no in between. And it's for sure about me and something wrong that I did. Not that their phone died or they were having a bad day or whatever. A feeling of I have to see them right now. Like I have to see them or, feeling like nothing ever works out right for me, or if they're so amazing, why are they even with me? Some of those might sound familiar. And the feeling that I knew something would go wrong. I knew it. You might also kind of find yourself obsessing about your relationships, which is kind of pretty common anyway if you're like infatuated with someone and like, that's all you want to think about. But if you're noticing sort of a pattern in yourself that you tend to sort of like become consumed with a thought of the other person, or sort of like monitoring that relationship and monitoring like if it's okay or not okay, that might be a sign of being anxiously attached or engaged in your relationship. And then there's also another kind of weird phenomenon where even if you're feeling insecure in the relationship and like kind of upset and fearful and stuff, there's still sometimes a tendency to like over romanticize your partner and only focus on all the good things about them and maybe like kind of forget some of the things that aren't working or some of maybe even red flags. There's kind of a tendency to put them on a pedestal and then undervalue yourself or underestimate your own worth in the situation, which can really work against you. Let's see here. So anxious activating strategies, that's kind of a therapist term. And just so you guys know, our presentation today is based largely off of this book called Attached. It's by Levine and Heller. It's an excellent book. It goes into all of this stuff in more detail. And it's geared toward people in dating relationships, whereas a lot of relationship books are toward marriage and that kind of thing, which may not be relevant yet for you guys. Anyway, so activating strategies, that just refers to, like, if you're feeling unsure in your relationship or insecure, how do you react? Like, how do you soothe yourself or help yourself feel better? So maybe, feeling of like, I have to see them right now. How you feel better is by trying your best to see them immediately. You might tell yourself that this is your only chance for love. Like, I'm just such a weird or unique or, hard to match person that I'm only compatible with a few people. If I don't make this work, I'm going to die alone. That kind of a thing. Or it'll, if we break up, who knows when I'll meet someone else or who knows if I'll meet someone else. Maybe believing that even though you're unhappy, it's better to stay in the relationship. So, things aren't great now, but if we break up, then that person's going to magically be fine and all of a sudden be this great partner and I'll miss out on that. Or that maybe you're holding out for that other person to change. I see that a lot, and it's a really hard situation to know, should we hang in and keep working on things? Is there hope here, or do we need to sort of acknowledge what's not working and move on? And the other idea that all couples have problems, we're not special in that regard, definitely true, but sometimes less true, depending on the situation. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, what? So what about feeling like you can still fix the situation? Pretty similar. If you find yourself like having to work really intensely early in a dating relationship, not a great sign. Not a great sign. If there's tons of things to fix, if there's tons of things to try and work out and get to work and you feel like you're doing more work than the other person, then that to me is not a great sign, or at least it's a sign that you really need to maybe think about the situation, reevaluate it. Is that fair to say? So I don't mean to be, angel of doom about it, but usually a good, healthy relationship doesn't take like toil. It's work for sure, but it's not like consuming. Yeah.
The other thing about that too, Heather's about to get into this, is that there are certain styles that work better with certain styles. So like she was saying, if you're working really hard in a relationship early on, that may be an indicator that you may be dating someone with a style that may not be compatible with you or as compatible as you could find someone else who would be. And she's going to go into that, but.
Yeah, we'll cover that more in depth in a minute, but it's a good point. That the whole point of understanding what your attachment style is and learning to recognize other people's is just recognizing what's going to be compatible with you, what's going to meet your needs. And so many relationships that are like causing a lot of pain and they're confusing and they're not working, a lot of times it's sort of incompatible relationship styles. Sometimes you can work on that, but sometimes it's like, let's move on and find people that will actually just make us happy, and that we can be happy with. So, so protest behavior. If you're anxiously attached and you feel like that connection is threatened, you might protest in all sorts of ways, and that can look totally different depending on the situation. So, a classic one might be excessive attempts to reestablish contact, otherwise known as blowing up their phone. Text after text after text after text. Why aren't you answering my calls? Where were you? I thought you were dead. I thought we were breaking up. We've probably all been guilty of that at some point or another. I think some anxiety is inherent in dating. But yeah, if you're noticing that that's a pattern of yours, that might be important to look at, because that can sort of, can have the opposite effect of kind of like pushing someone away if you're coming across as overbearing, with your anxiety. So, but we'll get to that more. The flip side of that might be if you feel like, if you're unsure about the other person or feeling like that connections may be threatened, you might withdraw. So it's that sort of fake, like, I'm going to run away, I'm going to pretend to be uninterested, but I'm hoping you chase me kind of a thing. Like, I'm going to sit in the corner on my phone, pretend like I don't care, and then I'm going to get mad at you if you don't realize I'm upset. It's kind of, I think, trying to get the other person to protest your absence sometimes. And then, yeah, keeping score, acting hostile, threatening to leave, manipulating the other person, trying to make them feel jealous. So a lot of the behaviors we see in like romantic comedies, which are never a great example for healthy relationships, no good. But that's pretty classic, right? Like if that person isn't into me enough or they're not showing it enough, I'm going to go flirt with someone else and make them jealous. That's a great idea. It's not a great idea. So here's a quick little chart kind of describing the different attachment styles and why or how they might fit together with each other. So like Adrienne was saying, anxious and avoidant, bad combo, because it's totally different relationship styles that are just going to kind of butt heads with each other. Because if you're anxious, you'll tend to want a lot of closeness and a lot of intimacy in your relationship. Whereas if, your style skews more avoidant, that's going to feel really smothering to you, and you value probably a little bit more independence, a little bit more distance. And so you guys are probably going to be at odds a lot over that. And I'll let you read through the rest of them. But I think you see pretty quickly like, oh, that's probably not going to work. Or you'd have to really be aware and kind of cooperate if that's your combination in your relationship. Because it's not necessarily like, it doesn't doom your relationship, but it's something to be aware of for sure. Oh, and a little fun fact for you guys. So the dating pool tends to favor the more avoidantly attached. Reason being that people with a secure attachment style tend to find a relationship, settle into that, and hang out there for a while. And then like if they break up and they're back in the dating pool, they don't tend to be there very long. And so then there's a lot of anxious and avoidant people floating around in the dating pool, trying to date each other and having a really hard time of it. So there's value, I think, in learning to recognize someone who has a lot of secure qualities and cultivating that in yourself so that when you come across someone like that, you can go, yes, that's a good fit. Let's get together. So, if this describes you, or if it's ever described you, let's talk about things you can try to do. So one of the biggest ways to combat this or to set yourself up for relationship success is to pick a compatible partner in the first place. That's going to eliminate so many headaches for you if you just make a good choice at the front end. So some of the ways that you can do that is to, number one, and I think most importantly, just acknowledge and accept what you really need out of a relationship. There's nothing wrong with wanting a lot of closeness, wanting a lot of contact. And another reason that anxious and avoidant people tend to be incompatible or can be incompatible is because an avoidant personality will feel like that's being clingy or that's being needy or you're being like way too much and you're being crazy or whatever. And that's just not true. It just might be sort of a clash of needs. And a lot of times when that's happening with couples, at least the ones that I've met with, there's almost always one of the partners, their solution is to just try to need less. Like, I'm just going to try to need less. I'm going to try to care less. I'm going to try to like be cool and like a little bit aloof and not let it bother me. And spoiler alert, it never works. It never works. It's not a good game plan. So better to just pick someone who loves being close to you, I think. It helps to recognize and rule out, avoidant prospects or people who just wouldn't be compatible early on. It's really important to be your authentic self, to just sort of let people know who you are, what you want, what's important to you, and that will, I think, naturally attract things that will work. It's good to remember that there's always plenty of fish in the sea. There really are a lot of people you could be compatible with, especially if you're working on yourself and trying to be as healthy as you can. And I think the second most important was give secure people a chance. Sometimes, especially in our dating lives, especially early on when you don't have a ton of experience, the chase can feel really thrilling or the drama can feel really fun. And someone who's sort of like more mellow and will interact with you in a secure way, help you feel secure in the relationship, sometimes that feels boring. And that's okay. I think that happens a lot. It's pretty common. But you're going to want to like be aware of that and then not let that be your long-term strategy for finding a partner. It's super fun to like have weird dating adventures when you're, in your teens and 20s, but you don't want to pick like a long-term partner that way. That's a recipe for disaster. So, anything you want to add? Chime in?
No, I was just thinking that, like, yeah, the chase is very attractive, and it's just kind of, you're thinking, like, okay, I'm going to keep it together, and then once we start getting, steady and things are going, like, kind of on pace, then I'll kind of let myself shine through, and then, maybe some of these qualities will come out, but it could end up that you're with somebody who's avoidant, and if you were just yourself at the front end, and just, like Heather was saying, just express your needs and what you want out of a relationship, and what you need as an individual person in a relationship, then things could go a lot smoother.
And I feel like we have to overcorrect a little bit here because we're not trying to rag on people with an avoidant attachment style. So if that's you, like, that's totally okay. There's reasons why people interact that way too. It's just, you can probably tell that they just clash. They tend to not be as compatible, those two styles. So one way to see if you're dating someone who maybe is not going to be able to meet your relationship needs, maybe they interact in a different way or they need different things from you than you can provide. Here are some signs. So if someone's sending you mixed messages, like, I'm super into you, and then I'm not going to return your calls for 2 weeks, but like, no, let's totally date. Let's totally be together. I don't want you to date anybody else, but I'm not going to call you my girlfriend or my boyfriend or, whatever. If you're coming across someone who sort of longs for an ideal relationship or idealizes the idea of finding the one, that's not always a great sign because usually that's not you, unfortunately. Someone who, like I said before, suggests that you're too needy, sensitive, you're overreacting, you're being crazy, like, not a great sign. Huh? Oh no! Well, I'm glad you're here. Someone who is not responsive when you do try to express your needs, like, that's not a good sign. It's not a good sign for any attachment style, because anxious people can certainly be guilty of that too sometimes, or even secure. It's important that you're with someone who recognizes that if something's important to you, it's just important, and you don't have to apologize for that, and that should be important to them too. And you guys can, I'm sure, read the rest of them. And let's see, I'll turn the time over to Adrienne.
Okay, and I think, like Heather was saying, we don't always fall in one category or another category, and it is important to notice patterns in yourself, because I think everyone in here is guilty of all of these different things, but it's paying attention to the patterns and how those play out consistently over different dating situations, because, and it's not that one is better or one is worse or anything like that. It's just we're all very different individuals, and how we behave in relationships and what we need in a relationship and what we don't need, what we like, what we dislike is very, very different. And just like attractiveness, you're attracted to certain people, there's physical attributes of people that you're attracted to, and there's ones that you aren't. It kind of works the same way for attachment styles. There's just some that really, tend to be attracted to each other, but they just end up not working out very well. Okay, so now we're going to talk more about the avoidant attachment style. And similar to the anxious attachment style, obviously there are certain emotions that you may experience more frequently in dating situations. Also, some of the ones that stand out to me: feeling angry, very frustrated, kind of tense, resentful of the partner, just distrustful, despairing, just all of these negative emotions that come up for you consistently in dating relationships that could be an indicator that maybe you're more avoidantly attached. And obviously there's a bunch of others, but if you'll notice, they are all negative, or, they're not positive emotions so much. They're more of the negative emotions. Also, people who are avoidantly attached tend to have certain thoughts when they're in dating situations, all or nothing thinking. So, I knew this person wasn't right for me. This proves it. Oh my gosh, I've got to get out of the relationship. I got to get out of this. No way. Overgeneralizing to your partner. I knew I wasn't meant to be in a close relationship. Like, this is why I don't date people long term. It just never works out. They're always too needy. They want too much of me. So all of those types of thoughts. Even malicious intent, thinking that your partner is just like purposefully trying to annoy you, however they may be, but the fact that it really, really bothers you is kind of an indicator that maybe you're more avoidantly attached. thinking that you'll be better off on your own. Like, I'll be fine being single until I'm 50, 60, 70. You know, I don't need a partner. I don't need anybody. Fantasizing about having sex with other people. So even if you are in a relationship with someone, thinking like, oh my gosh, like I remember so-and-so back in the day, you know, wow, we had really good sex. Maybe I'll reconnect with that person. And so that would be something typical of an avoidantly attached individual as well. Also thinking about your partner like, oh, she's so needy. This is pathetic. Like, why am I with this person? I need to get out of here. I'm feeling very suffocated. All of those things can come up if, you know, maybe you're more keen to being avoidantly attached. So, and I mean, I'm guilty of these as well, like pretty much all of them. Also, you may have certain reactions as an avoidantly attached individual, or if this is something that characterizes you more frequently, where you act out in arguments. You may find yourself just getting up and leaving and never really even addressing the argument. You may say kind of mean things to your partner, belittling them, putting them down, saying things that you'll later maybe regret, or that end up being very hurtful. Sometimes you kind of can look hostile or look very disdainful in conversations with your partner, making critical remarks that may or may not even be relevant to the situation, may just withdraw mentally and physically, minimizing your physical contact. So kind of withholding sex from your partner or physical intimacy from your partner is almost as a means of punishment. You may keep your emotional sharing to a minimum with your partner, may stop listening, and also ignore them as well. So one of the things, if you do gravitate more towards the avoidant attachment style, is tend to have deactivating strategies. And basically, it's when your partner does something that kind of enacts your attachment style. So when something happens to where that attachment style just takes over, this is what may happen for you. Like I've already said, you may say or think, I'm not ready to commit. Like, relationships aren't for me. But you tend to stay in the relationship for a very long time, but you keep telling yourself this over and over again, but you're still in the relationship. Focusing on the very small imperfections of your partner, like how they may speak, sometimes how they dress, like just small little things that happen that may or may not even be really pertinent to the relationship itself, but you're kind of nitpicking things. Pining after an ex-partner, so once again, like the phantom ex. So when you're in a current relationship and things may be going south or there may be some struggles happening, you tend to think like, oh man, I remember when I dated so-and-so, like, oh, that relationship was so much better than this, when really that's not the case. You're only thinking about the good things about the ex-partner and you're failing to remember the reasons why y'all broke up in the first place. And that's something that can happen frequently. The other thing that happens pretty frequently is flirting with others. So you go out to a bar, maybe with your partner, someone starts flirting with you and you engage in that flirting behavior back with them. And then your partner gets kind of jealous and starts maybe enacting out their activating strategies. But then because of that, that's annoying to you. And so then you just withdraw and then you stop talking to them and y'all fight, but yet y'all still stay in the dating relationship, even though it may not be the healthiest. You know? Was that an accurate situation? And I mean, it's something that we've all experienced and we kind of just do it unconsciously. And that's why it's really, really important to start noticing these things early on, noticing your patterns, noticing your activating strategies, noticing your deactivating strategies, because it can really be helpful in relationships to figure out if you're with someone that is the right fit for you, because it's all about fit. Also, yeah.
I just wanted to say, so in thinking about all of these different, attachment styles, I was thinking back through my dating history, and like there were times, different relationships where I fell into different styles. And for me, each time that I was sort of skewing more anxious or avoidant, they were signs that I was in a situation that wasn't meeting my needs. So instead of these having to be like your identity, like, oh, I'm so avoidant, you don't have to necessarily like take that label on, but maybe pay attention for these feelings and behaviors if you find yourself, using them to use that as a message to let you know, is this a healthy situation or is it not? Is this right for me or is it not? That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, definitely. And I would say that I identify more with the avoidant attachment style. And for me, my deactivating strategies consistently always played out. And before this, obviously, before I started learning about attachment style a long time ago, consistently I was noticing patterns of this deactivation and deactivation. It wasn't until I started dating specific partners that were more of the secure style in which I stopped doing those things. I felt more secure, even though I did relate more to the avoidant attachment style. I myself, because I was with an appropriate partner that was a good fit for me, I started feeling more secure. So if that makes sense. And the same thing Heather was saying. So the next thing is pulling away when things are going well, similar to the attachment style, like maybe not calling, not answering for a couple of days, forming relationships with an impossible future. So maybe becoming friends with someone who's married, but kind of longing for a romantic connection there, even though it's not really possible. Checking out mentally, keeping secrets from your partner, maybe going out and hanging out with friends, but not really telling your partner where you're going, keeping things very foggy or being very aloof with them, just so you feel more independent and in control. And also avoiding physical closeness, not wanting to share the same bed, withholding sex from your partner, etc. Two of the things I think that are very common for someone who is more avoidantly attached to experience is this Phantom X phenomenon and looking for the one. So I've already kind of described these briefly when we were talking about the previous slide. But when you're in a relationship and you tend to identify as more of the avoidant attachment style, you're always thinking back about that ex-partner who, man, why did I get out of that relationship? Like, yeah, they were so great. Everything about that was so good. And you just forget all of the bad things about that ex and why it was that y'all ended the relationship in the first place. And you just tend to fixate on that ex-partner, and really that prevents you from getting close to someone else, from letting someone else in. But that's part of your deactivating strategies, because that closeness is something that's harder for you. So you tend to look back in the past because that's safer to kind of think about an ex-partner. Also thinking about the one. When you start to really nitpick your partner and find things that are wrong with them, him or her, you're kind of like, oh my gosh, there's got to be someone out there for me that's this ideal, perfect partner. When really, that's not the case. You can find your ideal partner if you just pay attention to some of these deactivating strategies. And instead of thinking about the Phantom X, maybe focus more on who you're with currently. Instead of thinking about the past and thinking about the future that hasn't even happened, focusing more on the present moment and how you can maybe start getting closer to your partner now, versus who you may meet 10 years from now. But it's just common things that pop up. So if you do tend to identify from the things that we've been talking about with more of the avoidant attachment style, how to stop pushing love away. Because once again, the avoidant attachment style is a style where you kind of keep love at arm's length. You never really let your partner too close to you. If you feel that they're too close, you withdraw. So one of the things that's very important is to learn your deactivating strategies. So we've listed a lot of activating and deactivating strategies. You may or may not identify with all of them, but there may be a few that, like we've talked before, that may play out. Certain patterns may emerge in different relationships, and you'll start to notice, this is something that I do pretty regularly. And the other thing, if you do find yourself being more avoidantly attached, finding a secure partner would be good for you. Because if you get with someone who is anxiously attached, like Heather was talking about, there's going to be a lot of push and pull. And I think that anxious partner wants the closeness, the avoidant partner doesn't want the closeness, so there's just a constant misunderstanding and a constant just level of uncertainty that will always be happening in your relationship, even though anxiously attached and avoidantly attached people can be in a relationship for a very long time. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's a healthy relationship. And relationships with those two styles can work, but it does take a lot of work. And it may actually, you may need to seek services and counseling to really work through those things, because that's just part of who you are, and how you behave in romantic situations. So it's just maybe to start finding a secure partner at the front end. Also, be aware of your tendency to misinterpret other people's behaviors. One of the things that can also be helpful is, instead of thinking about the Phantom X, think about your current partner and make a relationship gratitude list. So what exactly is it about your partner now that you like, or that you appreciate, or that you enjoy about that person? Because being avoidantly attached, you're thinking about past or future, and you kind of forget about what's happening now. So making that list could be helpful. Also, quit thinking about your ex-partners. Stop thinking about them. There's a reason the relationship ended. Also, forget about the one. Sure, you can maybe meet someone different in 10 years, but more than likely, because this is probably your attachment style, this is something that's going to be consistently happening and popping up in your mind over the course of time, regardless of the relationship that you're in. And also, one of the things that's helpful is kind of adopt the distraction strategy. So it's really much easier to get closer to your partner when there's a distraction. So people who are avoidantly attached don't necessarily like sitting on the couch, hugging each other and like watching a movie and being very intimately close. But what can be helpful for the avoidantly attached person, whether it's your partner or yourself, to do dating activities that involve like something else going on, like bowling, hiking, sailing a boat, maybe cooking together, like things like that where there's something else going on. So whoever is maybe avoidantly attached can slowly get close and slowly kind of engage in, the screen went out. Okay, just 1 second. I'll just read like this. So, can you make that come back? Or that, just this thing. Hold on, wait. That one, but then, how do we get this back on? Well, I'll just use this. Yeah. So, anyway, so like I said, whoop. Where was I? Oh yeah, okay. Everybody can still see. Okay, good. So yeah, doing things that involve this distraction. So where your avoidant partner or yourself, whatever, can have a chance to experience intimacy and closeness and feel comfortable doing so, instead of just focusing on that. And then, it's going to be really annoying to read like this. Yeah, so I've already said, so letting your guard down. Hold on. I'm just going to do this. Okay. So the next slide is how to think about and pick out potentially, if you are maybe more avoidantly attached, how to determine whether or not you may be dating someone who is anxiously attached. In your relationship or in dating situations, it doesn't have to be long-term, consistent romantic relationships. These can be just casual dating relationships as well. Do you experience the roller coaster effect where you really never feel like you have a steady ground, where it's just like, woo, over and over, there's tension, and then there's like closeness, there's withdrawing, it's just a constant push and pull? That may be a good indicator that you may be dating someone anxiously attached, and that might not be a good situation for you. The next thing, do you feel as though it's kind of, you're having to emotionally counterbalance all the time? Like, once again, it's never an even keel where one person feels like they have to be strong and independent. The other person feels like they have to be, less than the other person. So there's always maybe almost like a hierarchy in the relationship. But it just goes back to that even keel. You feel almost as if your relationship consists of a bunch of stable instability. So just those two words together, that doesn't sound good. Stable instability. That may be a sign that you're dating someone more anxiously attached. Also, there may be times in your relationship where you're like, are we really fighting about this? Are we really fighting about this? Like, is this really happening? This fight is really happening, and it's escalated to this point. How did it get to this point? Like, what are we even arguing about? That may also be a sign that maybe you're dating someone who's more avoidantly attached. And then also, experiencing the trap, or that's what the book calls it, experiencing the trap, where it's like you have this eerie feeling that the relationship may not be right for you and that something is off, but you don't necessarily want to get out of the relationship because some things are good, but maybe more things are not so good. That could also be a potential sign that you are dating someone who is more of the anxious attachment style. So, I'm going to turn it over to, nope, I'm going to keep going. So the next slide, man, this is hard to see what I'm doing. Okay. The next slide we're going to talk about, so regardless of your attachment style, whether you're anxious, secure, or avoidant, or maybe you gravitate in between all of them, which is fine and very, very normal. One of the ways to help sharpen relationship skills, period, or some of the ways that you can do that we're going to talk about next. And the first being really try to judge your partner's responses to things, to figure out whether or not this person is someone that may or may not be compatible for you. And the first thing to do that is try to think about, does my partner actually try to get to the bottom of my concerns? Or do they just kind of push them away and never really address them or withdraw from me, whatever it may be? Does your partner tend to respond to the issue at hand, or do you feel as though they're dodging you or turning the conversation around to something that really wasn't the issue in the first place? Does your partner take you seriously, or is your partner making you feel foolish for even raising this concern or this question you may have about the relationship? And then also, when you're feeling upset, does your partner try to make you feel better? Or do you feel as though you have to get very defensive to make your partner hear you or listen to you? So that's definitely something to pay attention to. And then also, is your partner responding to your concerns only based on the facts and just kind of completely ignoring and not addressing the emotional piece? Another thing to pay attention to when you're trying to judge your partner's responses and figure out, is this a person that is a good fit for me? And one of the best ways to do that, a lot of people date one person at a time. And I think that it's okay to have a couple different people that you're exploring with and trying to figure out whether or not those people are a good match. Because like Heather said, there are a lot of fish in the sea, but if you tend to just stick with one person, you may get involved in a relationship with that person over a long period of time, because regardless of how inconsistent the attachment styles may be, people still stay in relationships, unhealthy ones, for a long period of time. So it may be more advantageous if you typically date one person and then go on to the next person, to maybe give a few people, get to know a couple people and figure out which one is maybe right for you or better for you or more compatible with your style.
But make sure they all know that you're dating more than one person. That could be a recipe for disaster there. Another thing with judging your partner's responses, I wanted to tack on for the avoidant personality. I think one of the reasons that the anxious attachment style doesn't work with that style as much, because there tends to be a vibe of the anxious person wanting to fix the avoidant one, like, oh, I'm going to make you open up, I'm going to make you love me, basically. And that when you're on the receiving end of that feels gross. Like, no one wants to be someone's project. No one wants to be molded in someone's image. Anyway, so I was just thinking about that because I see that a lot with couples too, and it's not good. Okay. So, wow, this is not great. So we'll talk about some of the principles of effective communication. Number 1, wear your heart on your sleeve. And there's kind of a fine line, because there is sort of an issue of healthy boundaries in this topic, I think. But the spirit of what it's trying to say, I think, is to be candid, to be open and honest and authentic about who you are and what you want. We're not advocating sharing way too much way too soon. You can still sort of go slow and build trust with someone before you really, share those personal parts of yourself. But it's good that every step of the way to be really who you are. Focus on your needs. You're the one in charge of yourself. You're the one in charge of making sure that you're taken care of. And so if you don't even know what your needs are, or you don't know how to sort of be okay with yourself, that's a lot to put on someone else to do for you. So you've got to be in charge of knowing what you need, what will make you happy, and trying to figure out the best way to get that need met. Be specific. Don't make people read your mind. Don't have some vague idea of oh, I'll just know when I know. There's some truth to that, but usually people who just know when they know have had a lot of trial and error beforehand that helps them know more quickly when they find someone really great for them. So try to get really specific and intentional about what you want out of a relationship, what makes you happy in life, what do you want just your life in general to look like. Do you want to get married or do you not want to get married? Do you want to be with someone long term? Do you want kids? Do you not want kids? That might be premature for you guys, but some of those sort of life goals you have for yourself, it's good to get really specific so you can attract someone who's compatible with that. Avoiding blaming others is a great principle just in general, but especially for romantic relationships. Like I said, it's sort of an issue of boundaries, of knowing what you need to take responsibility for and what the other person needs to be responsible for. You can't hold other people responsible for your happiness. If you're in a situation that's making you unhappy, that's on you, and you need to be the one to figure out what needs to change so that you can be happy. Be assertive and non-apologetic. So we were talking about in some of these incompatibilities, they bring out really ugly sides of us. So if I'm anxious and I'm with someone who's avoidant, maybe I yell at them to try and get a reaction out of them. Maybe I block them from leaving the room, or I try to take their phone, or I cry a lot to try and get them to engage with me. Or if I'm avoidant, there's all sorts of kind of passive aggressive, I'm going to, ignore this person or cut them off because this is making me uncomfortable. Those are not great ways to solve your problems or address issues in your relationship. It's much better to sort of own how you're feeling, try to be straightforward with that. You don't have to apologize, but you do have to sort of be honest and kind. I think that's the best way to get that taken care of. And if your partner can't engage on that level with you, then that's something to be aware of in your relationship. I think that should give you pause.
It's fine. She's already described all of these, so if you go online and revisit this PowerPoint, you don't just have to have that. There's actually some little explanations up here as well for when you go back and hopefully review this later before engaging in your next dating adventure. But there's one last thing. Oh yeah, the 5 secure the 5 secure principles for resolving conflict. So regardless of your style, conflict's going to happen in a relationship. I mean, that's just kind of the unfortunate truth. And I think these are some ways to help you better be able to resolve those situations when they do present themselves. And the first being showing just basic concern for the other person's well-being. So not just addressing the facts of the concern, but also addressing the emotional piece of the concern and what's really going on for your partner and what's really happening for them and also for yourself as well. Number 2 is focusing on the problem at hand. I think a lot of times couples can fight and then get completely derailed where now they're fighting about who knows what. Like, it could be anything. Like something starts at the beginning of the day and instead of addressing the problem in the moment, the day goes past, but now someone's mad because of someone didn't hang a shirt up on the hanger right. But really it's because something happened earlier in the morning that was never addressed and the person just didn't say anything. Refrain from generalizing the conflict. So like, well, yeah, but you always do, etc. And just trying to take that one situation and generalize maybe that person's behavior or their emotions to a bunch of other situations that may have had different things going on at the time. Number 4, be willing to engage with your partner, even though sometimes it's a lot easier to ignore a fight or like not talk about it because it's just less stressful and less tiring. Really try to engage with your partner and try to put yourself in their shoes and understand where they're coming from and also be able to let them know how you're feeling about the situation or the conflict. And then effectively communicate your feelings and your needs. I think I've already said that throughout all of those, and so did Heather. And that's just very important. Like being open and willing to engage and being vulnerable with your partner is something that you need to work on to do. And I think particularly if you're more coming from the avoidant attachment style, that may be something that's harder, but it's something to be aware of that it is difficult for you because you need to try to combat that and do things to, counteract. That's one of your deactivating strategies to withdraw and not get close. So, but yeah, so that's all we have. And then, yeah.
So I have a couple final thoughts on conflict. Conflict is really scary for most of us. It feels like sometimes it can threaten the entire relationship if we disagree. And sometimes that's what produces either maybe being a little bit overbearing or being withdrawing more and being avoidantly attached. Both, I think, are kind of those fear reactions of like, oh gosh, what if I lose this person? What if we are in a fight and we can't fix it and then we have to break up? And I'm sure there's probably some people in the audience who are like, oh gosh, that's my relationship. Like, oh gosh. But it's okay. You can work through that. You can sort of both move more toward the center of feeling secure. And conflict in a relationship isn't bad. It's not, it doesn't automatically mean that you can't be together. It's just how you deal with it that I think is the biggest indicator of whether it's a good relationship. And so I wanted to wrap up what we've been talking about. There's nothing else, right? Okay. Thank you. So like we said before, we work at Counseling Services and we both work with couples. And so if you and your partner are both students here at K-State, you're welcome to come into Counseling Services. And if you're feeling stuck in your relationship or even just feel like it could be better, come on in and we can work on it. Hopefully, we could teach you a couple things and help, tune up the relationship if you need it. Or if it's not working and you're not sure what to do, sometimes therapy can help you guys split up in a way that's more peaceful and make better sense of it so it's not completely devastating, even though breakups can be really hard. So yeah, you have to save therapy for just when you're trying to save something that's on its last breath. Or if it's just you and you've had trouble with dating and you want to understand yourself better, or maybe there's, childhood stuff that might be getting in the way or past relationship stuff, come on in for individual therapy too. That's also an option. So just wanted to give you a little plug for us.
Y'all know you get the 4 free sessions as a K-State student for free, or they're covered by your student service fees. And then after that, 15, and then after that, 25, starting with the 11th session. But yeah. Well, thank y'all. I hope you enjoyed our presentation, and thanks for coming.